Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to Popternative. This is a talk show and podcast. We have digital discussions, worlds of TV, film, news, pop culture, sports, everything really, depending on the guest. We talk about it all. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis. On social media, you know me as PD Beats. Returning guest coming back on the show. You will, of course, recognize her from Love Island on CBS. Mackenzie Dipman is back on Popternative. Mackenzie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back. It seems like it's been no time at all, but also a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about before. I mean, like 7 months ago, because that's when the show kind of like wrapped. We had you on. It's good to see you again. The one thing that we didn't have a chance to, because last time you came on the show, it was like about like Love Island, and it was like Love Island focus. But like you mentioned that you were like you were interested in sports, I believe, correct?
Yes.
So can you get into detail a little bit about that? Your background in sport? Did you play? Were you a big fan? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, of course. So I did. Sorry, it's a little bit windy here. So I did play sports, but I was never like overly competitive.
Yeah.
However, a way that my dad and I would bond is that before school every morning, he would have ESPN on, and he was actually watching Mike and Mike in the morning. And that was kind of my first introduction. Ooh, it's really windy. My first introduction to sports was through Mike and Mike. So that's kind of how my dad and I bonded. That's how it started. And then ever since then, I've just loved sports. And then I kind of grew to have an appreciation for it outside of my dad. So what I would do is I would kind of focus on a sport and teach myself everything, like teach myself all the rules.
Yeah.
So I did work for the Diamondbacks, and I really learned a lot about baseball from that. And that's probably my favorite sport. But I do also really love hockey and football. Basketball is the one sport that I just like really can't get too excited about. And I also have really developed since quarantine. I learned a lot about golf.
Yeah.
So always changing, always growing. It was really hard in the villa, like not being able to watch any sports, and it was during playoffs.
Yeah.
So we were missing like all these big playoffs, and the producers were nice enough to actually like show us some of the scores so that we knew what was going on. But yeah, I do love sports.
Yeah, because that was like a Love Island focused interview, and then like I was talking about like there was like a question, like a general question I had in there, like what are your hobbies, what are you into, and then you were like, I'm into sports, and then it kind of was at like the end, so it was kind of like, but I want to ask more questions about it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, and I did take in college, my major was in communication and media, but I did take a lot of sports classes. So I took classes on like sports history, sports statistics. So I have kind of learned a lot of different areas of it. And now that's kind of how I started my brand, was sort of based on my love for sports. And so Out of His League is my brand. And it's basically inspired by women having passions for careers that are typically male dominated.
Yeah.
And encouraging women to go after those careers, even if it's intimidating, and just really encouraging that female empowerment in like a man's world. So that came from my love for sports. And hopefully I will encourage other girls to pursue their passions no matter what is typically the norm.
So that was a good segue then, me kind of leading it off with the sports, because that's kind of how.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, for
you
sure.
Didn't even mean to, but you did segue me. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because, you know, we talked about 7 months ago, and that was kind of like fresh, like when the show kind of wrapped and everyone knew what was going on and everything. So now it's 7 months later since the show kind of aired and everything. What's the mindset like now that it's been like a good amount of time, right? Like where we talked last time was very fresh. What's the mindset like what's the mindset 7 months later, Mackenzie, like after doing a show like that?
Well, I finally got adjusted back to like sleeping at a normal time of day. And actually, so obviously I came off ahead of a lot of the other contestants. Like all my friends were still in the villa. But I've gotten to see all of them since then. And it's really kind of cool. It seems a little bit like a distant memory now. Obviously, like since Connor and I broke up, I think that was kind of one of the things keeping it the most alive in my life, was that connection. But I do feel like I've kind of started a new chapter, and then I'm just fortunate enough to have made all of these really great friends that I'll always have and cherish. And, you know, we're all going to be reuniting again in Miami in a few weeks. So we're still very much a family. We're just supporting each other as we kind of continue these new chapters.
Does it blow your mind a little bit how it was 7 months ago, but there's still kind of this consistent kind of love and interest from fans of like the past cast members of Love Island?
I mean, I feel honored that people are so invested in the show and that they're so invested in us as individuals. It's like continuing to air in all these different countries all the time. So I think that's what's kind of keeping the interest. And it'll be really cool to kind of, once season 3 starts and we get to then meet those Islanders, just kind of building the family, because a lot of us are close to you from season 1. And I think every time the show is on, I think it kind of revives that excitement and that investment in the show and in the storylines that are going on.
Absolutely. So yeah, you talked a little bit about kind of the mindset like 7 months later in terms of like getting back to normal, like the society aspect of things, like catching up on sleep, kind of getting back to like normal routines and everything. But what's the mindset? Like, you go on this reality show and some people, have different stories, Mackenzie, when they get involved with a reality show. Like a lot of them like know about reality TV. They're a fan of a certain show. They go on it. And there's people that go in kind of blind and don't really know what's going on. But like, did it ever, like, since like the time we've spoken and now, did like another, like, do you crave going on another TV show? Does that ever happen with you guys? Or is it just kind of like you're focusing on other things? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just curious, right? Because other people do other shows too.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely maybe an option in the future. I think for me, if I were to ever be on TV again, I would see it more in like a hosting capacity or like a guest star on something, which I would absolutely love the opportunity to do that stuff. Obviously, with my background in media, I love public speaking. But as far as another reality show, maybe I think sometimes I get a little like I miss the villa, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I could do it all over again. Like, and just have, sometimes I'm just like, wow, I would love to just be in that place again with some of my best friends and enjoy that again. But I think it'd be so hard going to a new show because it'd be all different people and it wouldn't be all of my friends.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess I'd make new friends, but it would just be different.
Because you see that there's like there are a lot of like people like your friends that are on reality shows that like they're not just done with like the one reality show. Like you see them come on other ones. So I was just curious to see if that ever come to mind, because it interests me, Mackenzie, of like what it's like when you're done the show, because like there's so many kind of opportunities, right? There's companies kind of messaging you for collabs on Instagram. There's opportunities for doing other things. And I feel like it's just kind of like, especially when I interviewed you last, I mean, it's so fresh and there's so much going on. What was your coping mechanism and like strategy like that back then after that show, like 2-3 months later, kind of like going for the offers? Like, what was that like for you?
It was definitely challenging, but it's all about surrounding yourself with people that you can trust and people who have your best interests at heart. So, I did get to work with like a manager pretty much right off the bat. That was really fantastic. And then my mom and my family have been a huge help. So my mom helps with my social media. She's kind of like my assistant / manager as well. So, I mean, that's been really helpful. And that helps maintain a distance for me of maintaining that like work to life balance, because it is really overwhelming, all of the messages and you want that because you want to engage. I'm never the type that's ever going to make someone who reaches out to me feel like I don't care. Like, because I do care. And I want everyone who reaches out, I want to try to respond to as many people as possible. But that's a lot to do for one person. So I think it's all about knowing your limits and creating like boundaries for yourself and asking for help when you need it.
Absolutely. And to kind of add to that, how did you... And like, this could be a question I could ask all the Islanders. I mean, you can't... It's there, right? Like the publicity and the headlines and everything, and like everyone's trying to get like the big headline and the gossip and the tea, you know what I mean? Like, it's there, you know what I mean? Like with everything, like how did you like deal with that and like block that out?
Try to avoid it. I tried to avoid it, I think. I feel like I've overall been relatively low key compared to maybe some of the other Islanders.
Yeah.
I think that everyone's kind of gone different routes as far as how they handle it. I think that I have definitely kept a little bit out of it as much as I could.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just being mindful. Like previously, we weren't public figures. We could do anything, and no one would probably notice or care. And now you do have eyes on you,
Mhm.
and it matters. And a lot of them are young eyes and impressionable eyes. And I feel like I never want to be an example of something negative like drama. It's just, I always want to be a positive role model. So I do try to make an active effort to make sure that I don't speak out or speak negatively about people. It's just never my intention.
It's one of those things too where I understand it. Like I've been doing this show for about 5 years now, and I get now that it's funny because we'll do sometimes it doesn't happen as much to me anymore, but like you'll get like the standard like you can ask this, you can't ask this like before like the pre-screeners, right? And the first thing that comes to mind is like people actually ask these things. Right? You know what I mean? Like that's the first thing that comes to mind. Like people are asking these questions and then like they're like, yeah they do.
Yeah. They're definitely, I've heard some very interesting questions. Very interesting.
Has there ever been a situation where like you're just like, I can't answer that? Like, has that ever happened?
Not typically. I think it is hard because sometimes it gets a bit repetitive.
Yeah.
Like, Connor and I have been broken up like over 2 months now.
Ooh.
And a lot of people keep on asking like, are you guys still together? Like this and that. And it is kind of one of those things that's hard. It's like you're reliving that breakup. Like every time someone
Have
asks,
you noticed I haven't asked anything about it?
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
You haven't asked, honestly. But it's like it is every time I do a question sticker on Instagram, that's like the most asked question is like, where's Connor? What's going on?
Because it's kind of like
what I find that to be so interesting.
It's there though. It's like there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the thing. That's why. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was a big story to the point too where people would like Google Love Island and like it would come up that you broke up. Like it's there. You know what I mean? Fly the windshield.
What I'm saying is like you could literally just like Google and you would get the answer. It's like I know that other people picked it up, but I mean I'm happy. It was very amicable. It was we still text. It was just I think that we both realized that if your lives are going in different directions at this age, you're really doing yourself a disservice, yourself and your partner a disservice by trying to compromise too much. Like,
absolutely.
You have to do what's best for you. And we both just graduated. We're both just starting our careers. Like, it's really hard to align with someone in that way.
For sure. Absolutely. And you kind of added, you kind of talked about this when we were talking about your new venture and everything, but like it's interesting because from this show you have a very big platform. You have a following of like over 300,000 on Instagram and everything. And I think I asked you this last time because you and Connor like it was starting to get a lot of the followers, right? Like it was going up every day. But like, do you always kind of wear the kind of the advocate hat a little bit too, like in terms of like you have a big platform, right? And you want to share voices and be as positive and impactful as possible, right? Like it comes with the territory a little bit.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I feel like I am definitely just like I'm naturally very outspoken. Like you saw that on the show, you see it if you follow me on social media.
Oh, we
like,
saw
I'm
it on the show.
Outspoken.
We saw it.
Yeah. I speak my mind, and that's who I am. And I'm always going to do that. I do definitely feel like I look at my Instagram less as something that's like, I'm going to, just be, I feel like it is a place that like I do have a platform and I have to take that seriously. And I have to treat it with respect. And that's just the way that I approach it. I know that a lot of people are more candid and I would love to get to that point. But I think it is really hard when you don't know. Especially like I do feel as though people who followed me originally after the show maybe didn't know my personality as much. Like they saw what they saw on the show and they saw me with Connor. But I think the people who have been following me this whole time are starting to see more of my personality and what I'm like. And so it allows me to be a little more open and be a little more honest about my opinions and how I feel about things and share my sense of humor more, because I never want to offend anybody, because that's something you have to be careful about as well.
100%. No, absolutely. Mackenzie, thank you so much for coming back on Popternative. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me anytime. I'll come back.
Yeah, it was good to catch up. I mean, plug away. People can follow you on Instagram. I think it's just your name, right? Mackenzie Dipman?
Yeah. Just Mackenzie Dipman, and then yes, also on YouTube, Mackenzie Dipman.
And we could look out for your stuff coming out soon, like your side project.
Yes, so my brand is Out of His League, and it has its own Instagram. So go ahead and follow that. It's also in my bio on my main page. So
amazing. No, that's awesome. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Until next time, this is Mackenzie Dipman and Petey Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.